Hi everyone, Dan here. Me and the rest of the plugin team are going to be creating a really cool collaborative electronic track, and we'll be using different kinds of music software. So I'm going to start off with a hi-hat and have a syncopated stick rhythm. So I'm using Cubase. I've got my hi-hat up here, and I've also got my two wooden sticks playing down here. So let's hear how it sounds. Awesome. Over to you, Katie.
Okay, I've had a listen to Dan's beat. I think what I'm going to do is record something a little bit percussive, maybe using maybe just a couple of notes with a lot of space for the others to add something to. I'm going to use Logic and I'll find a sound in Logic, the Logic library that I like. Okay, here goes. Okay, so I've got Dan's track ready, and the first thing I'm going to do is just copy it over like this so we can make the track a little bit longer. I found this cool vintage synth marimba sound in my library, and I'm going to open out my keyboard and have a go at recording it. Here goes. Cool, so that's done, and I'm going to send it over to Holly now, and I'm excited to hear what she's going to add to it.
So I've had a listen to what Dan and Katie have done so far, and I'm absolutely loving the vibe. I think I might add something a little bit more melodic and maybe something synth-based just to go over the top of what they've done. So I'm going to jump into Logic now and see what I can find.
So I've opened up Logic and I placed Dan and Katie's track at the top there. I've also chosen my instrument, which is the hypnotic synth bass, and now I'm going to use the keyboard to play my part in. Okay, here we go. Alright, that's my part of the track done. I'm now going to pass it on to Joe. I can't wait to hear what he adds to the track next.
So I've just had a listen to what Holly's sent over and what the rest of the guys have done. I'm loving how the track is sounding at the moment. I think what I'm going to add is a bass drum sound. I've got one in mind that I very much like, which you can tune as well, and maybe a snare, and that's all I'm going to add. Let's get stuck in. So here we are in Cubase. I've got the track that Katie, Dan and Holly have sent me across the top here. I've got my instrument here, which is the drum machine that comes with Cubase. I've got 3 bass drums here and a snare loaded in. It's at 130 BPM, that's the speed, so I can have a count-in to help me play in time. Let's see what happens. I think that'll do it for me. I'll tidy up some of the bits that aren't in time and I'll get it sent over to Paul. I can't wait to hear what you guys are going to add to this.
Nice one, everyone. That's sounding so good. I've had a look around at some apps that are available on Android devices. I found all sorts of music creation apps. I've also found some good audio editing apps. There's a lot of free stuff out there. Some of it's you have to pay eventually to get the full functionality. So I've set myself the task today of not making any more sounds, just using a simple audio editor to use the sounds that have been made so far and arrange them into a longer piece of music. The app that I'm going to use on my Android device to do some simple editing is called Audio Evolution Mobile Studio. The trial version is plenty for what we want to do. There's lots of effects that don't come with this version and some functionality as well. But for today, we are fine. So I'm going to open up Audio Evolution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring all the recordings so far into Audio Evolution project. Import audio file. Dan's starting sound. Next one was Katie's marimba, Holly's synth, and then Joe's bass and snare. I'm going to check the tempo. We're on 120 at the moment, so I'll change that to 130 because that's what Dan told me the original recording was in 130 beats per minute. And I'm going to turn on my snap. We are snapping to grid. Okay, great. That means that I can line all these up. Now to line everything up, I press edit and then I can move everything like that. Scroll is for scrolling around the song. Let's have a listen. Tap up the top and it'll play from there. And we can also crop samples like this. And if I press scroll, hold down, I get a menu. I'm going to go down to repeat and I'm going to get Dan's sample to repeat a few times. Okay. Now what I want to use Audio Evolution to do is I'm not going to add any sounds. I'm going to do a little bit of an arrangement on this. So I'm going to make the track longer just using the recordings that have been sent so far and make all the combinations of the different tracks playing together. I'm going to duplicate everything first and then start to remove tracks. So now what I'm going to do, that's just several copies of all 4 tracks. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tap on remove up at the top and then I'm going to remove pieces. So in those 4 there that I just removed, it left 3 different combinations of sounds. So you get the idea. I've used the audio editor just to have a listen to what various sounds sound like together to help me to decide what could happen in the music as time goes on. I'm going to listen to the rest and then I'm going to rearrange everything into a song structure. Okay, so after a bit of editing in Audio Evolution, this is what our track looks like now. It's now 4 minutes long. That's not to say that all of this arrangement will get used eventually, but it's just been a good way of picking out my favourite combinations and sending them on to James and then putting them into a quick order as well for a song. I don't think I'll play the whole thing now, but I'll play you the introduction, and you'll see what I mean as the hi-hats and the marimba are joined by the other 2 sounds. I've also given it a little bit of a quick remix, so to make the drums a bit louder relative to everything else. Okay, have a listen. Here we go. There you go. So you get the idea, and you can see looking at the arrangement of the track that there's lots of space now for James to fill out if he wants to, and mixing your sounds, even though it's just four ideas, just putting them together into this combination, you can get a good way forward to having a complete piece of music. So over to you, James.
I love how the track is sounding. Paul, the way that you've structured everything in place sounds brilliant. I'm thinking that maybe it needs some kind of melody, some kind of sparkle somewhere, perhaps some sort of vocals. I'm not going to sing anything, but I'm going to see if I can find something that might do a similar sort of job.
I've got the track so far, and then I also googled royalty-free vocal stem, which is where I found this sound. And that's what I'm going to use to come up with the melody part that I've got in my head. So I'm going to cut it up, find some sections that I like. Okay, I really like this section here. Okay, that long note could be really interesting and useful. Cool. Now, over the track, I'm thinking that the louder part of the song, the sort of maybe more chorusy or hooky bit, is the place where we could do with some kind of melody. So I'm going to have a listen to that bit and maybe start trying to layer in some of my sounds. Okay, I like where that is at the beginning. It's nice. I might think about adding some kind of effects to it. I'm liking how that's sounding. Now I'm going to take one of my other pieces here. This longer note could be interesting. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click it and I'm going to reverse that bit. I'm also going to grab at the beginning and just do a quick little fade in. I'm going to use a built-in sampler, it's called Simpler, in Ableton. So I'm going to drag that. Basically, as soon as I put this little clip in, it means that I can play that note anywhere on my keyboard. Then I'm going to hit play and have a mess around and see if I can come up with some kind of melody. Okay, I like that pattern. I'm going to record that in, and I think that's my part done.
Hi everyone, me again. I think the track sounds great. It sounds really, really good. I think it's really cool that we've been able to make it together without being in the same room. I think it was really good for Paul to show us how we can create this kind of music without having to use a paid piece of software or a computer. That said though, I am going to be using Cubase to do a final mix of the whole track. So I'm going to be putting all the sounds that everyone's created together, putting some effects on there, and then we'll have a listen to what that sounds like. So I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of all the effects and various little bits that I've done on the track. Okay. So on my hi-hats, I've just added a tiny bit of EQ and compression and a bit of delay, and that's just given them a bit more movement in the mix. On Katie's marimba synth, I've added a bit of delay and a bit of compression and EQ, and that just keeps it ticking along nicely. Holly's hypnotic synth, I've put a bit of distortion and a bit of compression and EQ, and that really helps to define its role as the bass, and to really give it a bit of punch as well. Joe's drums, which were a kick drum and a snare, I've added a bit of compression to make them really pop, and a bit of EQ to bring out all the important frequencies in there, and a bit of reverb to give the whole thing a bit of space. I've also structured the material the same way that Paul structured his, using his Android phone app. I've only made the track about half the length though, so it's about 2.5 minutes or so. James's vocals were really good fun to play with. The main thing I used on there was a bit of panning, and that just makes it swell round in the mix, which is quite a nice thing to listen to. There's also quite a bit of delay on them in some sections where they serve less of a melodic feature, more as a textural feature. And I've cut up some bits of the synths and put in like a sizzle cymbal in some parts just to give the whole thing some extra sound effects to push it along. Let's hear how it sounds.